Morning guys, Mark Ferrasci, Protect Dog Training. I got Joker out here at the park, and I'd promised you guys that we were going to do a little yak session about Cesar, so I guess I'll do it today. Trying to think of what to talk about. I think I mentioned it the other day that one of the things that you guys don't see on the TV show is anything to do with protection. And back when Cesar was hanging with me, that's been my life all the time. I've always gotten into bite work and always gotten into protection. So I got in with Cesar, and that's what it was all about, growing our skill is in the area of protection. Joker. Yep, go on, go free hunt. So in a nutshell, Cesar was one of the best decoys that I ever met, and I've told you that before. It's mainly because he's very animated, right? The structure of being a decoy for the sports were just starting to come up. Ring sport had just came into the country, and it was being driven by a few people in the country, and so it was just starting to get established. They were sending over judges and doing competitions. It's one of the first sports, other than Schützen, that actually made a venture into America. And now ring sport's very respectable. And then they've got Mondio Ring and got a bunch of other stuff, and a lot of our people are going over to France to compete in their playground, on their field, which is totally cool. So in a nutshell, that was where we were at, but we were doing what's called tabletop training. And you guys don't know that if you're not a professional, you're probably not familiar with tables. Tables were put together by a gentleman by the name of Jim in England. He was a bird dog trainer and back in the South with a lot of the hunting dogs. And he put together a whole series of tables that were based on a certain psychological aspect of working the dogs in just certain ways. I won't go into that today, but Cesar was real good at it. And we ended up having a guy that came out of Florida, and I won't drop names. I can drop all kinds of names, but I'll just go ahead and say the gentleman was in Florida, and I don't even know if he's with us anymore. And he was going around doing seminars on the tables, and because he had hung with Jim England. So he was very adept at it and understood the whole psychology behind it and was very good at tabletop training. So, Joker, with me. Good boy, good. So in a nutshell, Joker, with me. With me, good. Good. Couché. Assis. Au pied. Good. Couché. Joker. Assis. Couché. Dabu. Dabu. Back up. Back up. Back up. Here. Good boy. Here. Here. Nope. Good. Up, yeah. Good. That's my boy. So, go free hunt. So, in a nutshell, we got really heavy into the tabletop training. So the round table, square table, long table. And we were going out and doing a lot of work with the table. And we met this gentleman that was in Florida that came out and did a seminar. He got really close with Cesar, and him and Cesar got pretty tight. And he gave us the designs for the table to be built right. You see a lot of round tables now, and I look at them as some of them are real ghetto. But so we had a table that was set up in one of the old Boeing manufacturing locations that was going to be getting bulldozed. It was a piece of property, and it's a huge old building, and we'd go in there and we'd do a lot of building searches and do all kinds of stuff. We hung together doing a lot of bite work. And then we would meet with a whole group of guys over in South Central in the alleys at night. And one of those guys I mentioned his name the other day, was Malcolm Laz. This goes back 20, 30 years ago. And so you never see any of this on the show. He had a place on 163rd that he no longer has, but he did for a lot of years, that was located at a Salvation Army facility. And they used to have all the ladies, because this is the garment district down in LA. And a lot of ladies that were separating the clothes and deciding what's good and what's bad. And so this facility had these huge old bales, 500-pound bales of clothing. And they would bale up all the old clothing that was going to be trashed. And these stacks of bales of clothing would just go as high as you wanted them to. So on the weekends, we'd grab the forklift and we'd move these big old bales into configured things for the dogs to jump on it, because he had the pack. He had all kinds of little stuff that he did with the pack. Joker, good boy. So in a nutshell, we would have a lot of fun on the weekends doing a lot of different creative things with a pack to give them exercise and mental stimulation, right? Because one of the things that he believes in with that fulfilling the dog's psychological needs was pack involved travel with the pack, a lot of mental stimulation, and a lot of work in going after and doing things that were very active with the whole pack as a whole. So one of those things, he would run. He would run and he would climb these old bales, and the dogs would just be following him, and he would jump from place to place and just get the dogs really exercise, and he was the one that was running with the pack and keep him very active. Another one of his games that you won't see on the TV shows and things that don't get shown because they wrapped the show around him and had a different image overall with that, is he would have the dogs chasing after a balloon. He'd blow up the balloon, he'd get up there, and there'd be 20, 30 dogs all around him. And he'd start, and the dogs would start going crazy because they knew it was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, he would pop that balloon up in the air, and the pack would just go nuts, go crazy, bouncing after this balloon. And the balloon would bounce off of one dog and then bounce up in the air, and the dogs would just go crazy after this balloon until it finally popped. And then the game would start all over again. He'd exercise these dogs in a lot of different mental stimulation ways that kept the pack really active in that regards. So, and then we would travel a lot. We'd go from place to place, and we'd go up into the Hollywood Hills and Sierra Madres. I showed him a spot up in the Sierra Madres, and it was all about traveling with a pack and fulfilling that psychological need for the pack to travel and go to different places. And then we would get out and we'd exercise. Up in the Sierra Madres, there's a canyon that goes down in there behind the Santa Anita back there that drops in, and it takes about an hour and a half, an hour to get down into the valley, and then you work the whole creek and the whole thing, and then you'd come back up. By the time you got up, these dogs had definitely been worked, right? So a lot of exercise, a lot of travel. But one of the things that he did that I didn't realize, and this is kind of where I want to get off on this subject today, was that he was going to places that were affluent. We'd go to the Hollywood Hills, where the people with a lot of money and the mansions and everything lived. And they would get out on these trails, and they would be exercising and walking. And one of the big things, you'd get in, we had this little Astrovan. He had this little Astrovan, a little white Astrovan with a cage up in front. And we would put all the dogs in the back. They were free reign. They weren't in kennels. They were all together. So you'd have, 15, 20 dogs, 25 dogs, all in the back of that little van. And you'd get out on a parking lot and go somewhere like behind the Sierra Madres or something, and people's jaw would see all those dogs coming out of the vehicle, and their jaws would just drop. It was amazing. And then he had these little leashes that slip leads that he had made from a leather guy, and he'd slip them over, and then he had his whole pack, and he'd walk with the pack down. So it was very impressive. And looking back, I realized why he was doing that. He was doing that to get attention. Birds of a feather flock together, and those with money is where we were going, to these locations with money and everything. Hollywood Hills, or down at the beach, where there's a lot of different mansions on the beach in LA. I can't even think of the name of the beach down there. But so these places that would get him attention and then allow him to get some attention from the affluent, and that's what caused him to get where he's at. He was smart, and I wasn't realizing it. I was getting into this is where we were going to exercise the dogs, and these were good locations to take the dogs out. But there was a little bit more of a method to his madness, right? And looking back, I now realize, and it worked. Obviously, he got some attention and met the right people, and those people got him the connection that he got in the National Geographic, and that took him where he's at. But never doubt that Cesar's where he's at, because he's very likable, very nice guy, and he's got some very unique thought processes behind the pack and behind dog psychology, So it's very interesting. All right, so that's our little story for today in regards to Cesar. There's a lot more to tell. There's a lot more little things that are specific in what we did, when, etc., etc. So we'll go over it. Thank you very much. You have a good day. Mark Ferrasci, Protect Dog Training, talking the Cesar Stories. Let's just call it that. We'll call this series the Cesar Stories. I thank you very much. You guys have a good day. Bye-bye.